Добрий день, я вітаю.
Good morning. I want to thank everybody who joins us. My name is Olha Atamanova, and I have to see all of you here in Ukraine Media Center. Thank you for joining us. Today we have invited you to discuss a very interesting topic, quite timely in my opinion. So we called it today Children versus Career, how to achieve balance. But we understand that the challenges that we're facing during the war are of global nature. Maybe not so much in this world have faced challenges like this. Today we understand that due to the deficit in the labor market, the women master new professions, they switch to new professions that were previously inaccessible or not so interesting for them, and we understand that this situation that we were facing before the full-scale invasion during the war has only jeopardized, and the search for solutions is ongoing. We will try to take part in it. We understand that first we need to reinforce our economy. We will have to get involved in this process. And on the other hand, recently, I think yesterday, there was news popping up about the mortality and birth rate in our country. We understand that the mortality is twice as high as birth rate. That's yet another challenge we will have to overcome. We will have to find the solution to mitigate this situation. So today we will try to take the first steps to approach this topic, to discuss it, and to think about how we can cope with it. So let me introduce our speakers today. Joining us in the studio are Ksenia Alekankina, head of Reform Index project, VoxUkraine. Also joining us is Halyna Zhukovska, senior referent of the Government Commissioner for Gender Policy. Natalia Karbowska, co-founder and strategic development director, Ukrainian Women's Fund. And also joining us is Yulia Skichko, owner, director of Alef Stroi Invest. Good morning, dear ladies. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining our discussion. So, Ms. Ksenia, let me start with you. Let me give the floor to you. I know that VoxUkraine had a study. You were researching this situation. So can you please share some conclusions that you've drawn from your study? Good morning. Thank you for having me. Yes, our colleagues have studied these practices. You know, we have demographic crisis that was going on in Ukraine for a couple of years before, and the war has even jeopardized this situation. And the women were less economically active in the labor market of Ukraine due to the war. The men got mobilized more, and women got this challenge for getting more involved. So it's a double load on the women. It seems like first you have to pay attention to your children, to think about bearing children, and then to think about the economic balance to support the labor market and to make money to take care about the children. So yes, we wanted to study this issue in a complex manner, you know, on both sides, both demographic and economic sides. And, you know, the policies that support the economic balance are in line with those supporting the childbirth rate. I mean, the operations of the kindergartens, development of the women, retraining of the women, their retraining for different professions, to make them want to get back to the labor market so they have good jobs, something that motivates them to come back, like something like good salary. Also, what's good for it is the information campaigns that help to divide the home responsibilities between men and women, because in some countries the situation is such that women take care of their homes, but in Ukraine the situation is different. You know, it's the heritage of the Soviet Union when everybody had to be employed. So again, sometimes there is some support for the women, so they can get some relief from their home responsibilities to support the economy, so to say, and to continue educating their children, raising their children at the same time. So we don't have to press on women because, you know, this home care is another type of labor. I just want to give you an example of a friend of mine. She has born one child at the year of 25 and another child at the year of 35, and she says that now it's a double responsibility because my parents now need additional care. And this is yet another reminder that there are no quality services in Ukraine for the elderly. And again, if there are small kids, elderly parents, this issue also requires solution. And we frequently don't just think about this, that grandparents sometimes are not of help, but rather yet another relatives that require additional resources from us as women. Thank you. So then I'm having another question. Are we really going to overcome this gender gap in the labor market and the demographic crisis at the same time? Is it even possible? Well, great question, but before I proceed to answer, well, obviously we will overcome it, no questions about that. But before answering your questions directly, I would like to add a couple of things to what Ksenia has just said, because last year, upon the request of the Office of the Vice Prime Minister for European and Euro-Atlantic Integration, with the support of the Ukrainian Fund for Social Reforms, there was a study about the economic capacity of the women during the war. So basically the things that we're discussing. And let me give you just a couple of statements about the way the labor market is looking like now. So 49% of the women aged 50 to 60 are currently employed. Why so little? Because this is exactly the answer to what Ksenia has just said. 22% of the women are employed unofficially. 20% of the management positions in businesses are taken by the women. 2.7 million women were forced to go abroad under this jurisdiction of other countries. So this is yet another component of the demographic crisis, and 60% of the internally displaced persons are the women, plus 47% of the private entrepreneurs. Small private entrepreneurships opened during the war were women. So we see that women are quite economically active, and they require the support by the state, by the employers, to ensure their economic activity and home caring function, because during the war, unfortunately, we know that the majority of the nursery homes are either destroyed or moved away, which is a great problem. So how to solve this issue with the deficit of the workforce? Me and Miss Natalia, we had an opportunity to travel around the country. We had meetings with the heads of the regional military administrations and in Zhytomyr. The activities of professional schools was reprofiled, and they trained the new students, the women, to drive big trucks. I know that in Kiev the women are being trained to drive the trolley buses, and there is a training group for the women to become an electric technician. Those are just the first steps that help us to overcome the stereotypes related to male and female professions, to create the new environments in the workspaces. And there's yet another important aspect. You've mentioned, I don't know, did you mean this or not? But you've mentioned the overcoming of the gender gap in payment. And this is when the women hold male professions, the rate of payment should be just as high as the men have. Thank you, Ms. Halyna. So, Ms. Natalia, we understand that we will have to overcome those challenges. We will need to learn how to overcome them. So I would like to ask you about how the government can help our women, first of all, to find this balance, to help them find new professions, get retrained, and support them in their desire to bear children at the same time. Good morning, dear colleagues. Thank you for having me here. So I think that our today's conversation is just another confirmation of that fact that the gender policy of the state is not about the rights of specific groups of people, but it's also about the economy. It's about security, ecology. And if we don't take into account the gender policy in all those aspects, we're not going to move forward. We were talking about it during the Berlin Recovery Conference, and the organizations of civil society, the female organizations of civil society, we've suggested to the government and our international partners who support the recovery of Ukraine, we've suggested 10 steps program that we think is necessary to ensure fair gender recovery of Ukraine. So those 10 steps are posted in our website, so if you're curious, please get familiarized with them. We advocate this issue with our international partners to have the government take into account those steps in calculating the funding extent to Ukraine, and talking about the recommendations about how to ensure the fair and equality in the labor market, how to ensure the economic recovery of Ukraine at the expense of gender equality, how to ensure the compliance with the human rights. Our colleagues have already started talking about this, so undoubtedly the experience and the data from the analysis evidences that we have to train the women in new professions. So preparing to our today's conversation, I've checked the data from HR agencies, and in my opinion, those figures are a little bit horrifying. That's the official statistics. The deficit in the labor market today is 4.5 million employees, and this tendency will be preserved for like 10 years. Many researchers and the employers say that today the personnel deficit is one of the main problems that create obstacles for development of the business. And as a person who knows it from practice, gender policy more and more, the specialists understand that gender policy should be taken into account in the labor market because it's a solution to the problem. As Ms. Halyna has said, we think it's important to hold the awareness campaigns, training campaigns, requalification campaigns for the women, specifically with involvement of women into such non-traditional sectors as green energy, one of the priority areas of development for Ukraine. Well, you might have seen quite an intense campaign online. The women were searched to be trained in maintenance and installation of solar panels. It's a wonderful initiative that needs to be scaled up in Ukraine. New professions, some unexpected professions for women, such as truck drivers, cargo truck drivers, and such professions will be becoming more and more in construction. Me, as a person who is dealing with the repair works in my house after a missile strike, it was a challenge for me to find the construction workers. Those are mostly men from all corners of Ukraine, and those teams are becoming less and less. So I'm one of the people who is facing this type of problems right now. In a practical dimension, so it's important not only to create the new jobs, to train the women in those jobs, but also to create the favorable infrastructure. That's one of the recommendations, one of those 10 steps that were suggested by civil organizations to make sure that both men and women can share the home care work and their jobs. For example, the kindergartens, convenient work schedules for the women, programs that can stimulate. We have a little bit of such programs, such as municipal nanny, but such programs are not so numerous. The funding is insufficient. It's important to draw the attention of the donors to such problems so they could help. There are solutions that we develop together with the analytics center, civil society, with the government. I just think that we just need to be more loud when we broadcast those solutions so we're better heard. Thank you very much. Ksenia, do you have anything to add about what the government should do? And then we'll talk about the businesses. Yes, I just wanted to add that just a month ago, the president has signed a law on preschool education, and it contains quite important things, such as kindergartens of family type that allow the family at their home to have about 5 kids from other families, to invite 5 kids from other families for the education purposes. So I have a small kid myself, and I've sent a request, and we've seen that only 30 children in the age under 1 year visit the kindergartens, and only 30 of them attend kindergarten groups. So basically, mothers or fathers, they don't have opportunity to work themselves because they have nobody to give their child to be taken care of too. So hopefully this law will allow the new forms of child care. We understand that the state ended up in a difficult situation. It's not about the government funding. It's just about the deregulation of this sector so that the government allows the children to be taken care of, for example, by the neighbor. It's like not you give your child away to God knows whom. It just needs to be legally regulated. The government should understand that it will allow both moms to work, to take 2 more children, to make some more money. Well, basically the foundations are already laid for it. I hope this law is going to come into effect and work properly. Thank you, Ms. Yulia. I think it's not a secret for anybody that there is a deficit in the labor market. Now, it's a painful issue for any business in our country. So to what extent, in the example of your company, to what extent have you been able to implement the gender-balanced policies? How do they help you? I'm sure that there are challenges because everything new is always a challenge, but at the same time, can you please share your experience? So we've launched an incredible initiative. We were assisted extensively. We were supported by the Ministry of Economy of Ukraine. All of the competitive economy of Ukraine supports us. And in the facility of Stroi and Nemeshaeva Professional School, we've launched the Machinery Operator School for Women. It's built as a training camp, and it's a synergy of efforts of the government, donor support, our facilities to launch such a project to demonstrate what we can do and why is it important. So talking about the staff deficit, I was predicting it right at the beginning of the full-scale invasion. But the construction starts with the construction machinery and it ends with the construction machinery. And if we don't work in this area, we're not going to be able to build anything at all. Because even the men coming from the front lines, we're not going to switch them back quickly to their profession. Because the machinery is always a hazard. It's like 9 tons of metal being operated
by a person. So now already the first cohort is at the training desks. They all switch quite quickly to new profession. One of the students is the mother of 3, and her youngest child is a daughter of 1 year old, less than 1 year. So we've organized the full system for them, the ability, dining, everything, and training. So they do everything there at the training facility, and they can also unite their personal life during extracurricular time and the study. Well, everybody is scared. It's a very unusual profession, because the construction machinery is not even a light vehicle, but somebody has to work, somebody has to take this responsibility. The girls tell me, like, the eldest one is 55 years, she has 10 more years to the pension, to retirement, and she says, I'm gonna make some good money before I retire. So I don't think that women should be, or I think that women should be probably even paid more, because they grow even more responsible than men. So when is the first graduation? The first graduation is in September, and so we are going to take 5 cohorts. There will be 5 training courses. We question every single female. We understand that they are going to work further on. And one of the students just told me yesterday, you have to try cakes, and I have come here not to try but to study. It was real cool to hear something like this from a woman. Well, thank you for your experience. Thank you for your attempts to do so. I think it's very important to do things like this. We have to do it in the level of civil society. We have to establish some prizes that would award the businesses for launching projects like this, those who help the women to get integrated, to get adapted during those difficult times of war. Thank you very much. I would like to touch upon the topic of European integration. Over there, gender equality works, probably not everywhere, not in all of the countries, but frequently there are experiences that we can make use of, and I would like to talk to you about the way our movement, our accession to European Union would help us with this gender balance, and to what extent can we use someone's experience already, or is it the other way around? Do you think that we will have to walk this way by ourselves because no one ever had any similar experiences before? Well, first of all, what I would like to say, undoubtedly our way to the European Union is, is our lucky ticket to make sure that we don't only de jure but de facto ensure the equal rights for the women in our society. In European Union, gender balance and gender equality is one of the priorities, and it happened so that I personally know about this from my own experience, because my daughter-in-law, starting from the year 22, is staying in Germany with my grandchild, and step by step the gender equality is being ensured, the equal opportunities and the needs of the women are covered in the areas of childcare, of professional training, and so on. So basically very practical steps. And what's going on our end? Well, everything starts with the legislation. This is the European approach. That's one of the conditions for the accession, and the first screening that was made, I would like to say that there was a lot of remarks in a number of provisions, but talking about the gender equality, there were no remarks from our partners. So, how do we move forward? We have legislation, the legislation of European Union, and Ms. Natalia has just said that we cannot just view gender equality, in this narrow tunnel. The gender approach is something that should be ensured de facto in our society. And de facto, all of the legislation is now being reviewed, and now the task force is established, and the negotiation process is starting next week. So there are 23 groups, 23 teams, representatives of businesses, civil society, the government, and we will be standing for our position. It doesn't necessarily mean that we will be through this process shortly. I mean, the process of legislation review. For example, Turkey, starting from the year 1995, is going through this process, and given the fact that Ukraine is a unique country and we go through all of the processes quite promptly, hopefully we will be through this process quite quickly as well. So talking about the practical area, last year there was initiative of Marina Bardin, and we've established a task force to review the legislation for maternity leaves. She was planning to become a mother back then, and it was a really pressing issue for her. So me, Bardina, our team, we've done that work. We've engaged civil society, public, and the government. And after a number of strategic sessions, what we were able to see that first, the legislation about the maternity leave should be changed. The mothers should be allowed to choose whether they stay at home for 3 years or 1 year without losing all of their economic capabilities. They will continue moving. So question number one is the matter of childcare. We need to create conditions to make sure that the childcare can be going on up to 1 year. That was already mentioned by Ksenia. And again, the employers, we have to work with the employers. Such employers as Miss Yulia are not so numerous. And at the same time, back in the year 2020, Ukraine joined EPIC, and the Association of Employers, they've joined too. They understand this topic, they support it, but unfortunately we cannot ensure everything just as quickly as we wanted. But again, that's the matter of time, but we will continue working more with the employers in this area. Ms. Halyna, but don't you think that on the level of the state we should think about some program for such businesses who take active part in reintegration of our women? We have to support those businesses having demonstrated such opportunities to them. Well, let's start with our basic legislation on ensuring equal rights for men and women. It was adopted back in 2005, and it required urgent review. There was a task force established, multidisciplinary task force. We've developed a draft law. It was already agreed by all of the bodies of executive authority, and now it's about to be forwarded to the Ministry of Justice of Ukraine. All of those issues were taken into account in that draft law. The practical tool is the government strategy for ensuring equal rights of men and women until the year 2030 that was adopted in year 2022, and over there is a provision in it to support the businesses in ensuring equal rights for men and women. And you're absolutely right, Ms. Olga. We have to somehow award them, to encourage them to do such work. Yes, we do it practically. Ms. Natalia, in continuation of the topic of European integration, which is undoubtedly our choice, which is important for us, in your opinion, to what extent it may help us achieve gender equality? To what extent does it help us already? And maybe there are some, hidden dangers. Well, I'm an optimist. I don't know about some hidden dangers, but there are some barriers that we have to overcome. So talking about the Euro integration, let me get back to my statement that I've already made. The gender policy is supposed to be part of other policies. And the experience of the European Union countries just demonstrates how fair, how profitable it is to ensure gender equality. Like, look at Scandinavian countries like Sweden, Norway, and the Baltic countries who joined EU later and who started in the conditions similar to us. So to what extent they are changing now thanks to the favorable policies that they borrow from other European Union countries. So, for example, we were mentioning the maternity leaves. Why do we need to invent the wheel if there are wonderful practices in other countries? Everything is already written. What is the number of days of leave for the father, for the mother, for the grandparents? There are different experiences from different countries that were already proven successful. So we have a lot of windows of opportunities that we need to use. Yet another thing is study and analysis. European Union in this respect demonstrates quite a good example for us. For example, in the countries of European Union, the Institute of Gender Equality is working. It's based in Lithuania, and it's dealing with the collection and analysis of data, and it helps develop the gender policies for all of the countries of European Union. And I want to say that we are lucky because thanks to the support of European Union, Ukrainian Women's Foundation implements this initiative in Ukraine that is aimed at gender statistics and gender analysis, and we are happy to work with the network of gender analytical centers, including VoxUkraine. They're one of those centers we work with. And another partner of ours is the Institute of Gender Equality, and in Ukraine, we prepared the first index of gender equality that will be made based on the techniques of European Union. We work on it in cooperation with the Office of the Commissioner for Women's Rights and with the Institute of Statistics. So that's yet another step in the direction of Euro integration. Talking about the European experience that, in my opinion, requires to be borrowed by Ukraine is the communications campaigns. We were analyzing within our project and in cooperation with our partners from Stratcom and in cooperation with our Lithuanian partners, communication campaigns aimed at overcoming the gender stereotypes. The world is not perfect. No matter what policies we implement, there are gender stereotypes in the society, and we need to develop the strategies to overcome them. And I think that the best ones are the specific examples how the gender equality helps to change the situation. Such campaigns exist in the European Union when the men get more involved in the
childcare work, for example, or home care. And I recall the experience of our Women's Foundation when about 15 years ago we were making a documentary which was called "Who's Gonna Sing a Lullaby?" So it was about a man in Ukraine who went on maternity leave. You cannot imagine how difficult it was to find men who were not ashamed to say that they were taking maternity leave. I'm sure the situation is changing now. I'm sure that there's a lot of men who could say it with pride that they went on maternity leave to, for example, observe their children growing, being raised and developing. So we're changing as a society, no doubt about it. I would like us to change even quicker, but what is going to help us to change quicker is the experience of the European Union and our integrational aspirations. Thank you very much, and I cannot help but touch upon the topic, very important in my opinion. I understand many women may be watching us, so probably a small advice from every one of you: where to go, where to find such opportunities, how to help women to get involved in the change of our economic sector, to get involved in other opportunities being opened for the men, where to start. So where to look for this support? Please, the floor is yours. Well, great question, because I'm sure those people who look for the opportunities, they're gonna find them, no doubt about it. So I would like to advise two things. I know that such institutions do a lot for the women. So first, there is DIA application that has a specific dedicated training content section. How to obtain IT education, English language, which is absolutely necessary now. Economic opportunities, all those resources are accessible to absolutely everybody through the portal. Moreover, we were gathering analytics, collecting data for the last year, and up to 63% of visitors in all those portals are women. Another important advice: the Ministry of Economy of Ukraine. I would like to say that we cooperate quite fruitfully with them, and Ms. Tatiana Berezhna, who is the commissioner, who is the coordinator for gender equality, who is in charge of this job in the ministry. She does a lot to support the women. And for this year, the state allocated more than 3 billion hryvnia for establishing of private businesses for the women. There is a lot of opportunities for the women who are the wives of the servicemen. So a lot of activities. Please visit our sites and look. We have other institutions who are absolutely involved all around Ukraine in this type of activities. We have very intense coalition 1325 is established in 19 regions of Ukraine, and those coalitions work in this area too, to reinforce the economic capability of the woman. International organizations, UN Women, do a lot in this sector, and within the last year they've helped the women to obtain another new education. They've trained 3 million women. Ms. Natalia has mentioned Berlin today, and during our panel there was a documentary demonstrated about the women's leadership, about our advances, and
All in all, every day I go to work, I go to subway, and I see the commercials by the Ministry of Economy. You're gonna make it. This is what's written there. All the women living in Ukraine, the Ukrainians who stay abroad on a temporary basis, we're gonna make it. We're gonna able to rebuild our Ukraine, the most beautiful all around the world. Well, some advice from you, Miss Natalia. Well, my advice would be something that helped me back in the day. In my way, I've met activists, feminists who were working back then and keep working in a women's civil organization. When I joined the feminist movement, I had no specialized education. I didn't know a lot about women's rights. I was just feeling unfairness in relation to my daughter when she went to school. That there were the labor lessons. So the boys had another informatics lesson instead of labors, and the girls were like sewing something or doing some like homework training. And when I asked when are girls going to have their additional informatics lesson, I got a response like, why? Why do they even need that? And then I've started learning more and more, and I've met teachers from feminist movement who told me that this is a systemic problem. It's not only my daughter who's facing it. So, I've realized it becomes the matter of gender policies. So again, gender policy is the responsibility of the state. So my advice to the women, to the men who feel some unfair treatment or who experience some unfair treatment to their relatives, look for those who think alike. Civil organizations are numerous. Just look around, talk to the people, and I'm sure you'll find support. Thank you, Miss Yulia. First of all, I agree with what the previous panelists have just said. My elder daughter just went to the labor lessons with the boys. I want to appreciate the gender equality established by the school principal. And my advice would, don't ever fold your wings. As soon as you're told you're not gonna make it, that means for sure you're going to make it. Our women are not so gender equal, they are gender capable. During the times of challenge, we are so ready to everything that zone of comfort just doesn't exist. Our zone of comfort is constantly changing. Our goals are growing with the quantum leaps. We're mega cool. That's the fact. So let every single one of you to pick your opportunity. We have a lot of such windows of opportunities. We're being so greatly supported. We just need to use that time properly to develop your thinking, to develop your conscience, and to fill yourself with knowledge. Thank you very much. So I would like to give advice from the civil organization. First, I would like to ask or advise the women in the government to deregulate the sectors. For the women, it happens to the kindergartens, it happens to the jobs, and on the other hand, on a personal level, network, help each other, support each other. We just need the government to support it, not to condemn it. And the women should take this responsibility and to support each other. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this interesting conversation. Hopefully, we were able to find some answers to the questions of our concern, and hopefully we will be able to find this balance to regulate it to the best extent possible. I want to thank all of the listeners and spectators for your interest in this topic. I'm confident we will be getting back to it because the challenges that we have in the labor market, in our economy, demographic challenges that we're facing, all of them require our attention. Thanks everybody for your interest, and we continue working together for our victory. Glory to Ukraine.